So this video is going to be a little bit different today. I wanted to start by saying that I'm no longer in Korea. Surprise! This in part makes me a little bit sad because I live for moments of adventure and exploration, but I'm also in part happy because this means I can now engage in what is known as Praxis. Now, I only recently learned about Praxis, but I believe that it is essential to being a more responsible traveler. The idea of Praxis can be traced back to Aristotle. It's been suggested that for him, it was deliberate, responsible, human moral action. Its contemporary definition is best outlined in Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He says that it is reflection and action upon the world in order to transform it. So, what do I mean by this? Well, borrowing from Freire's approach, it is not enough to go out and see the world. Instead, I have the responsibility to create a more moral world. So, in order to do this, I wanted to sit down and relay some of the stories I was told in Korea. Now, I've been tutoring Koreans in English for 3 years now, an opportunity that during the pandemic was the closest thing that I had to traveling. That's why I went to Korea in June. And if you miss any of those videos, you can check them out up here somewhere. In those prior videos, I talked about Confucianism and how Korea developed rapidly after the Korean War left the country devastated. Now, I want to share what the current social situation is like, specifically for women. I'm going to share some stories and accounts now that touch on 3 main issues: the age-based social hierarchy, marriage, and the mandatory military service for men. I've changed the names of my sources. I want to say that some of these problems may not be exclusive to Korea, nor do I intend to degrade Korean society in any way. My intention instead is to stress the importance of praxis. For me, discrimination is a universal problem of the human race and something I personally don't tolerate in any form. I also realize that my identity and privilege as a white man has shielded me from many of the problems I will discuss. Again, my intention isn't to point fingers, but rather to introspect and learn how to be a better human. So, I'm going to start with Shinhye. Shinhye studied law. She's determined, well-traveled, and incredibly bright. She has a comfortable job that permits her to have an acceptable work-life balance. However, in Korean culture, a constant pressure exists to be servile to elders, even at the workplace. Confucianism and the Korean language itself give elders an elevated status in society, which discourages younger people from questioning them, and also foments an "I'm always right" kind of attitude. After work, it's customary to go out for drinks and dinner with coworkers. But there are times where Shinhye feels like she has to make excuses to not join in. This kind of work is life attitude permeates much of Korean society. The Economist ranked Korea as the worst country to be a working woman in 2016. An OECD report from 2014 reported that South Korean women earn just 63% of what men make, lower than the 84% average. The glass ceiling exists. Let's move on to Jiyoung. Jiyoung is a doctor working in a general hospital. She has 2 beautiful dogs, enjoys reading, and explores her creative side through writing and drawing. I will never forget the warm welcome that she gave me to her country. Jiyoung told me that in the past, giving a son was the utmost duty for Korean mothers. So before she was born, her mother was going to have a boy, but ended up having a miscarriage. She has heard remarks implying that she would not exist if not for this miscarriage. At work, Jiyoung feels isolated. She believes that the age-based hierarchy in Korea creates an unnecessary power imbalance in many social contexts. She's in the opposite position of Shinhye, as she is older than her bosses, which makes for uncomfortable interactions. This hierarchy discourages friendships in general with people who are older than you. Finally, Jiyoung is not married. In many countries, the patriarchy envisions limited possibilities for unmarried women, and Korea is no exception. On another note, in any given population, there tend to be more females than males. However, since Korean families prioritized having a boy in the past, in 1990, the sex imbalance ratio peaked at 116.5 boys to 100 girls. That was also in part because of the family planning policy of the 1980s that allowed abortion due to medical problems. Checking the sex of the fetus and aborting females was a common practice as if daughter were a medical problem. Since there are more males than females, there is even more social pressure on women who have failed to find a partner. Next, we have Yuna. Yuna was born the same year as I was. She also works in the field of medicine and radiates confidence. She speaks her mind, something she tells me isn't always common in Korea. She met her boyfriend in college, Jiyoung, who I also met. The couple took me out for drinks and amazing food. They are incredible together. The only thing is that Jiho's father has strong expectations for the couple. He openly asked Yuna why she's not cleaning Jiho's room. He's also pressured her into getting married and having kids without her own consideration. Yuna tells me that he is heavily influenced by tradition and money, and is therefore used to getting his way. I admire Yuna's strength to resist his demands. Next up is Yuri. Yuri is kind, her English is immaculate, and her ideas inspire me to be a better person. She does book club, writes, and has participated in trash cleanups. She took me to a cafe where we wrote letters to our future selves. There she told me a story about how at the same job interview, her friends were asked by the same male middle-aged CEO if they had plans to get married. Since women are entitled to maternity leave, this can make them a more risky hire in the eyes of employers, who see males as a more stable choice. 1 in 5 women decide to quit their jobs in Korea due to marriage or childcare. I also asked her what she would say if she could give advice to all of the men in Korea. She said, "I wish Korean guys would be able to put themselves in Korean women's shoes. If it's too hard to acknowledge the unfairness that unfolds in the everyday lives of Korean females, then I hope they can at least be willing to look carefully at this unfairness that they see in their sisters or wives at the workplace." Following Yuri, we have Hanul. Hanul is a UI UX designer. She loves productivity and doesn't mind making a sacrifice to advance her career. In her free time, she likes to go for a stroll through the botanical gardens of Daejeon, her hometown. We went there together, and I asked her about the mandatory military service in South Korea, which contributes to the social disparity among men and women. Men have to give up 2 years of their lives in their 20s. Hanul says that the military service so heavily influences Korean society that it has become a condition for citizenship. Therefore, women are not citizens. According to her, this military culture has been imported to the workplace, ultimately favoring men. This country demands conformity, she told me. Korea is a collectivist society, and stepping out of the mainstream isn't normally rewarded. Also, Confucianist values created a system where men used to eat first at the dinner table, and these values have lived on to the present day in Korean society. My other friend Eun gave me some more advice for Korean men. She said she would like for more men to simply recognize the inequality that exists between males and females. In her opinion, most men don't recognize this situation. Finally, my friend Hyojin told me that social media has become a space where men and women frequently confront each other about these issues, rather than in person. She's told me that these days there are so many headlines of violence, abuse, and threats towards women. I suppose the role of social media has helped expose some of this violence that women continue to suffer through in modern times, but it also seems that it serves as a platform and as a shield for hateful speech. So, again, my intention is not to provoke an argument, but rather to reflect. I think that the 3 aspects I outlined before of Korean society have made the lives of women much more difficult. On the other hand, modern movements such as Bihon life, where singles have ruled out marriage altogether, have emerged as a form of counterculture. Once seen as a more shameful social status, singles are taking back pride in themselves. I would like to say that in learning more about female empowerment and talking it out with my friends in Korea, I promise to be more compassionate and more willing to make a change in my own life, to make the world better. So, I encourage others to think about how to adopt the idea of praxis in related situations. And finally, If you're interested in learning more about the female experience in Korea, I recommend checking out the book Kim Jiyoung, Born 1982. All of my sources come from this novel, which explores the experience of a Korean female from birth to marriage. Lastly, if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much.